Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Sports Exchange. My name is Scott Morgan, Roth of Motor City Madmouth. And before I introduce my panel to you, I want to give you a reason why I'm wearing the Michigan Wolverines attire today. Hats off to my Wolverines. They beat the Nebraska Cornhuskers on Saturday night by 3 out in Lincoln. Great matchup between two programs that won over 900 games and some of the most storied programs in their history. And when the Nebraska Cornhuskers joined the Big Ten, not like you're only going to have a couple opponents to beat up on. They had to find themselves in a very balanced conference. So anytime Michigan beats Nebraska, I'm wearing the maize and blue. With that said, I have my panel this week. Greg Fuchs writes for the South Florida Tribune. Steve Balestrieri. Well, Steve, glad to have you back. Wasn't able to make it last week, but he's back.
It's good to be back.
And Rick Curti, Mr. Opinion. Right?
Yep, absolutely. And I said I wasn't drinking the Panthers Kool-Aid, and good thing I didn't drink that Kool-Aid Sunday.
Okay, and of course, my superstar running back, Mel Farr Jr. Glad to have you back, Mel. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, well, we're going to lead off this broadcast since Steve Balestrieri was unable to join us last week. But we definitely have to hold out for his opinion on this. And let Steve talk about the return of Tom Brady back to the New England area. Obviously, the Buccaneers escape with a 19-17 win over the Patriots. What are your thoughts, Steve, about the Tom Brady's act going back to Mass?
Yeah, it was good. I mean, Brady got a huge hand when he came out for the warm-ups. When they came out for the start of the game, they showed a short, I think it was like a 1-minute montage of some of his greatest moments as a Patriot. And the fans all cheered it. And then when he came out to start the game, they booed him as if to say, okay, we love you, Tom, but now you're wearing the wrong uniform. And they were loud. If you've ever been to New England, the acoustics aren't great there because they have an open end to the stadium. So like I've been to different stadiums and where it gets really, really loud. Gillette Stadium doesn't get that way because of the open end. But that place was loud on last Sunday night. People were yelling and screaming, and it was a big event because Brady spent 20 years there. I thought Bill Belichick had tremendous game plan. I don't know if you guys talked about this last week, but his game plan, for the Bucs was basically he was going to throw a bunch of defensive backs out there and kind of dare them to run the football because he was going to try to fill up all those holes in the secondary. Where Brady would normally throw the ball. And I thought they did a tremendous job of that. I mean, Brady was held without a touchdown pass. They were only 1 for 4 in the red zone. And, Brady went down at the end of the game, as Brady has done so many times. With 2 minutes to go, they kicked a field goal, took the lead. But, give the young kid credit. Mac Jones led the Patriots right down the field. They had a chance for a 56-yard field goal, but, the football gods weren't with them at the end of the game there. The sky opened up. It was really raining hard. And Nick Folk doinked one off the upright. But even still, there was, I believe it was 56 or 59 seconds left. And I was thinking to myself, even if he makes this 59 seconds for Tom Brady to get a field goal range is an eternity. So I'm not going to say they were going to win the game, but it would have put them ahead.
So, Steve, my only question about this before we go on to the other business that we have here, was the game a lot closer than you anticipated? Or
oh, yeah.
Was it?
Yeah. I thought Tampa was going to blow them out because I didn't think the Patriots had the people in the secondary that could match up. But like I said, I thought Belichick did a great job because, there was times when, first down, they'd have 7 defensive backs on the field. They had guys who were safeties and corners playing linebacker, basically daring them to run with Leonard Fournette. And they'd give up that 7-8 yards underneath, but they weren't going to give up those big plays on offense. And, they were kind of hoping that Brady would get a little frustrated because I know he wanted to make a big splash coming back into New England. I don't think he would make that mistake again.
Well, final score for whatever it's worth, 19-17 Buccaneers escaped with a win there. So we'll go ahead and segue over, since this whole panel was on last week talking about the dismantling predictions of what was going to happen to the Miami Dolphins, but we're going to lead off with you, Steve, and continue with you. Obviously, Tom Brady dismantled the Miami Dolphins by a 45-17 score. A lot of us had the game decided by 3 touchdowns. Obviously, I'm sure if you were on with us, you probably might have thought the same thing. So, Steve, my question to you is what your impressions about what Tom Brady did to the Miami Dolphins?
He eviscerated them pretty well. I mean, they have a lot of weapons, even without Rob Gronkowski. They have some really good wide receivers, and even without Gronk, their tight ends are still good. I've always liked Howard. I like Brady. So they have so many weapons, and Mike Evans is a beast, and Antonio Brown. I mean, they just have Chris Godwin. So many different ways to go with the football. And Brady always sees the field really well. It wasn't surprising to me at all that he picked the Dolphins apart. And I kind of sensed that was going to happen, especially after New England, where he didn't get in the end zone. I know he was pumped up for that one. And, Miami's been a traditional foe for him. So that game has added dimensions, even though now it's an in-state rivalry. But, he's played Miami so many times as a member of New England. So that's a big rivalry game for him.
If my memory serves me correctly, I believe that Antonio Brown had a short stint with the Miami Dolphins and was released immediately after he started causing some problems. So I think in a certain sense of him getting a couple of touchdowns with Tom Brady, he was pretty happy to kind of stick it to the Dolphins a little bit too.
He had the short stint with the Patriots, I believe.
Yeah, he scored a touchdown against the Dolphins in his
Okay,
only game
right.
with New England.
Well, thanks for correcting me on that. I knew that there was a connection there. I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
So he was a short stint with the Patriots against the Dolphins. It's okay. I knew that there was a Miami Dolphins, New England Patriots.
Yeah, that was his only game with New England where he played against Miami.
All right. Well, thanks for correcting me on that. I knew that there was a connection, Greg. Thank you very much. So with that said, okay, Greg, why don't we lead it into you and talk about that dismantling there that we all predicted. You certainly weren't drinking the Dolphins Kool-Aid there by any stretch of the imagination, were you?
I mean, do I have to talk about it? I mean, it was bad enough as a Dolphins fan to actually watch what went on that field. Now, 48 hours later, you're going to make me relive it all. It sounds like what the Constitution can't inhuman punishment. That's what I feel like I'm doing, reliving that game. I said last week the game was going to be ugly. And even though the final score was ugly, it wasn't as ugly as I thought it was going to be. I mean, Miami was only down 7 points going into the fourth quarter. They made changes to the play call. They made changes to the offensive line. And even though Tampa's got a good pass rush and they knew Miami was going to pass on virtually every down, they did a reasonably good job of protecting Brissett. Of course, the flip side is none of the Dolphin defenders showed up. 2 highest paid cornerbacks in the league, and they couldn't cover any of us, I think, last week if Brady was throwing to us. I mean, it was just embarrassing how bad that defense was. And a couple things. I think we all take Tom Brady for granted because he's just been so good for so long. It wasn't like he was sitting back in the pocket for like 5 seconds on every play. Dolphins had some decent pass rush against them, and he got drilled after a few passes, and those passes were absolute laser shots downfield to people. One was the 62-yarder to Brown. And then later on in the game, I don't know if he's under pressure or not, but he threw an absolutely perfect pass to Mike Evans in the end zone. Byron Jones had him covered, but he threw where only one guy could catch it, and that was Evans. So pathetic effort by the Dolphins defense. Got to give full credit to Bucs receivers and to Tom Brady. And hey, can the Dolphins beat Jacksonville this week? I sure hope so.
Well, we'll see if we have time to get into that with the show that we have stacked, but we'll see. I don't know. We are really stacked tonight, folks. And as I mentioned to you, when you look at this episode, it's going to be mainly opinions only, no games. But now that Greg threw that teaser out there, we'll see if time permits for us to do that. All right. So Mr. Opinion, Mr. Curti. Okay. Why don't you go ahead and talk about the Dolphins and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers game that was decided by double digits?
No surprise. I think we all predicted it was going to be an absolute blowout. I thought Tom Brady would make a statement and say I went to New England. I struggled, and maybe Belichick's got the number on me, even though I escaped with a win. It's like Houdini escaped. And he said, I'm going to make a statement and show people why I'm the best quarterback right now and greatest ever. And he showed everyone. And it was just, it was a pathetic performance by the Dolphins. They're terrible. And I think next season they're going to go after Deshaun Watson and they're going to get a new coach. I think Forrest is gone, unfortunately. And they look terrible. They look like they just totally have given up and they were completely overwhelmed.
Okay. All right, Mel, what's your take on that?
Well, I think I talked about it. I think I had said last week that I think Tom Brady was going to come back with a vengeance this week because I don't believe he played very well up there in New England. So I think you saw that. Obviously, I think he had 5 touchdown passes. He did something for the first time that he's never done, I think, before. What was he? Throw for 300 and have 500 touchdown passes, or throw for 400 and have 5 touchdown passes, whatever it was. But he did something that not even he had done before in the past. So I think you just saw, the Tampa is just a much better football team. Obviously, those guys in Miami, they get paid as well, but they were outmatched. I mean, you see the running game, and Leonard Fournette was playing very determined. When you have the luxury of having an Antonio Brown as a number 3 wide receiver, and you're getting him at bargain basement prices. I mean, you're getting a number 1 receiver at a bargain basement price, and you have him as your 3rd receiver. So he's going against the 3rd best DB. I mean, that's a matchup that Tom Brady has to love. And that's why Antonio Brown, I think, had the success that he had this past week. And I think we talked about it last week with, Juju Smith and, his struggles. Obviously, he benefited from Antonio Brown being there. And I mean, Antonio Brown is a true number 1. I mean, you look at him, he's the number 1. Obviously, he had some issues. He went off the reservation there for a minute. Tom Brady was able to reel him back in. And, that's one thing I was thinking about when I was watching the football game. We were talking about Ben Roethlisberger and Tom Brady. Ben Roethlisberger had the same opportunity to do for Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell what Tom Brady is doing for Antonio Brown and the running back, the guy from LSU. I can't think of his name. I just brought his name up. But Tom Brady had the opportunity. Leonard Fournette. Ben Roethlisberger had the same opportunity with those personalities to rein those guys in as Tom Brady has done. I mean, look at him. He's a great citizen in Tampa Bay versus what he was in Pittsburgh. And I think that all goes to the leadership of Tom Brady and the lack of leadership. And I think we've talked about this before, or at least we've heard about it, the lack of leadership from a guy like Ben Roethlisberger. I mean, you look at Pittsburgh, they're struggling right now. Ben looks much older than Tom Brady. I know I'm getting off subject here, but I like Mike Tomlin. I like the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I hope they do well. But getting back to the game, I just think that Tampa Bay I think that Miami was overmatched. I mean, they were a very determined bunch of guys because of the way that they played up there in New England. I don't think they scored a touchdown. I think they kicked a bunch of field goals. So obviously, Tom Brady didn't throw a touchdown. So he was very determined. They just caught him at the wrong time.
Yeah, the only thing I'll say about it is the Miami Dolphins ran into an angry Tampa Bay Buccaneers football team, which, by the way, had to play a competitive game in New England. As far as now, here's a really interesting thing that Greg and I can certainly relate to, being in the area. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers certainly have the Miami Dolphins numbers. The Miami Dolphins won their Super Bowl before the Buccaneers even took the field in the 70s. And obviously the Buccaneers have theirs up in the new millennial, and the Tampa Bay Lightning certainly have the Florida Panthers number for sure. So, you can't even compare the two hockey teams. Now it looks like the Tampa Bay Rays appear to have the Miami Marlins number in terms of their face-to-face regular season meetings, but to the credit of the Miami Marlins, they do have 2 world championships under their belt and have only lost 1 postseason series. So, if you have to compare the 2 areas, South Florida gets the edge in the baseball department, where when it comes to hockey and football, it looks like obviously the Tampa Bay area certainly gets the edge there. So I just thought I'd bring up that cross analogy when it comes to these particular metropolitan areas in the Sunshine State. So it's interesting. And I have a feeling it'll be a while before the Panthers can master the Tampa Bay Lightning, because we're dealing with the NHL opening night, and a lot of people are predicting the Lightning to win their third in a row. Not going to get any other NHL talk, but if I were a bet man, and I'm not, okay, I like the Tampa Bay Lightning to win it all. You know, I won't believe in the Florida Panthers until they won a playoff series, and it's been since the 1990s since they have won one. And we'll keep the criticism on the Panthers at that point there. But the bottom line is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are angry, and the Miami Dolphins were the whipping boy, and that's why we all picked hard against the Dolphins last week, because Tom Brady was looking to whip up on the Dolphins and did exactly that. Well, obviously no conversation would be complete unless we bring the Detroit Lions up once in a while. And you want to talk about a way to describe this franchise, the word bad luck would probably be the best way to do it. Losing 2 games, he had a 66-yard field goal against Justin Tucker and the Baltimore Ravens, and then a 54-yard field goal against Minnesota. Although I will say in that game, Jared Goff self-destructed a little bit, had a fumble and a costly interception. And ironically, in those games were decided by the same 19-17 score. No, I'm not a lottery expert, okay? 19-17 would be a good 4-digit number. And if you guys ever win the lottery out there, let me know that you did it with those numbers. Okay, 19-17. I won't make a big deal. If worst comes to worst, I might invite you on as a guest. So with that said, Mel, since your dad played for the Detroit Lions, is it bad luck or what that this 2 team should be 2-3, and they lost by 2 last-second field goals that were over 50 yards?
Yeah, I think it's some kind of record. I think they set a record of losing in the last seconds, field goals over 50 yards, and the score being 19-17, because that was a score in 1970 when Dempsey kicked that record field goal at that particular time to make it 19-17. Then a couple of weeks ago, another record field goal was kicked in the last seconds, and they lost 19-17. And then this week here, the last second field goal, 19-17. Yeah, they do have a little bit of bad luck, but they're competing. Obviously, they haven't won a game yet. We'd like to see them win a game. They went for 2 on that last touchdown that they scored. They converted. Unfortunately, weren't able to keep them out of field goal range, and they were able to come down there and kick a field goal on them and win again in the last second. So, I mean, I know it's heartbreaking. Obviously, we all know it's heartbreaking for the coach, because he wears his emotions on his sleeves. He was obviously very emotional after the game, as he felt for his players. You know how hard they work, the kind of work that they put in and week out through training camp and so forth and so on. And for them to get so close and not to have a victory, obviously that is very painful. But yeah, we've always talked about it. The Lions have a bad luck streak. I don't know what it is. I don't know why it is, but they just have a bad luck streak. Hopefully they can get it turned around. Hopefully this is the guy. I mean, the team has kind of taken on his personality. They are a tough team. They do play hard. They just haven't figured out a way to win. You can see why the Rams gave up on Goff. He's obviously not as talented as Matthew Stafford, but it is what it is. That's who we have right now, or that's who the Lions have right now, quarterback in their ball club, and we just have to roll with them. But yeah, it's unfortunate. But hopefully they get this thing turned around. We still got we got 12 weeks to go here. Who knows? Maybe they can go on a little run here and get things turned around, and you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, Dan Campbell is definitely getting a lot of compassion in the national media, because this team does play extremely hard. They have a no quit attitude. I've been watching a lot of national television shows, and I'm going to tell you, a lot of people really are impressed with the demeanor of Dan Campbell, the passion, and how he cares about the players in the organization. And you know what? I read his transcripts all the time, because the Lions were on their media distribution list, and I got to hand it to Dan. He's the type of guy that you really, 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 really pull for. And, they could very well be 2-3. I mean, geez, Pete's, to lose by 2 field goals of over 50 yards. My goodness. I mean, that's a tough way to go. All right, Rick Curti, Mr. Opinion, take it from there.
Well, you've heard of the curse of the Bambino. I think this was the curse of Barry Sanders. Ever since he retired abruptly, they have just not been very good at all. And I know the Lions haven't won a championship since like the 50s and all that, but I mean, it seems like they're cursed. They do look a lot better with Dan Campbell. I'll give them that. I mean, they do have a lot of heart. That's just, I mean, nobody could script those two losses like that. And so they're not as bad as we all think they are. They just have some hard luck, but hopefully they'll turn into wins. I still think they have an issue at quarterback. I've never been a big fan of Goff. And he just, I mean, to me, he just looks more like a bust every day. But I think if they get a good quarterback out there, and they had one, but unfortunately the Lions are just not, they haven't been good in a long time. So we'll see what happens, but they have to come up with a win. They're just too good to go like 0 for 17 or something like that. I don't think that's going to happen, but they're much better than that 0-5 record, obviously. So they're not as bad. They're not that bad. They're just, unfortunately, just a lot of bad luck, unfortunately, just how it happens. So hopefully they'll get it together. And but I do think Dan Campbell's the right man for the coach. You can see a lot of improvement compared to when Matt Patricia was there.
Well, for whatever it's worth, the last time the Detroit Lions won the championship was on December 29th, 1957. Why do you think I know that date, guys? I was born. It was my birthday 5 years before it happened. So
there you go.
I'm actually a trivia question back in Michigan. Not that, for those that know me, anyways. December 29th, 1962. December 29th, 1957. And yes, they beat the Cleveland Browns. So for you Cleveland people that really want to know or care to know, that's when the last time they won the championship. I think the only one who was probably alive back then might have been you, Steve Balestrieri, right? Were you that? You weren't even born?
No, I was born in 58. So
you missed it.
That was even before me. That predates me. So that's how long that is.
All right, by 1 year. All right, well then go ahead, take it from there. What are your thoughts about the Lions, Mr. Balestrieri?
They're just like a cursed franchise. I mean, whatever can go wrong will. And I mean, they've had some great players. I mean, they just can't put it together. I feel bad for Dan Campbell. I'm watching his press conference on Sunday afterwards. I mean, he was wearing his heart on his sleeve, and you have to feel for the guy. You know how much he's putting in. And like it's been said, everyone's saying it, the players aren't quitting. The players are playing hard for him. They've had some terrible luck. I mean, to lose on a 66-yard field goal with time expiring, I mean, even Justin Tucker, I would have bet that he wouldn't have made that. I mean, that's, it's just ridiculous. But 2 weeks in a row like that, it's just heartbreaking. You have to feel for the players on that team. But we'll see. We'll see how they, handle it and come back out on Sunday.
Well, it didn't hurt that Quentin Cephas, one of their better wide receivers, is out with a season-ending injury either. Not that the Lions.
And then their center's out now too, right?
Center too.
Right now.
Yeah, toe surgery. So
yes.
And they just paid him a
Yeah.
boatload of money this spring.
Yeah, so there's a couple more key players. So the team that's very banged up. All right, Mr. South Florida, what's your take on the team that resides in the Motor City that, by the way, for whatever it's worth, before you say anything, Greg, okay, we know that George Wilson was the first head coach of the Miami Dolphins, came from the Detroit Lions. And if you want to draw that South Florida to Detroit connection, Don Shula once upon a time was an assistant coach for the Lions. We all know what he did as well. All right, Greg, I'm giving you the easiest segue to comment now that we've connected Detroit and Miami, albeit I-75 wasn't even a pipe dream back then that connects the two areas. Go ahead, Greg.
I think I was 6 months old when the Lions won their last championship, although I can't remember watching the game. My mom probably had me watching something else. The two injuries this week, but Campbell's got them headed in the right direction. I mean, rebuilding is a slow process. They got extra draft picks because of the Stafford trade. They just need a hit on them. I mean, as a Dolphin fan, they've done a terrible job of drafting over the years. Even all the draft picks they've had the last few years, it's still to be seen on most of those. But you need to hit on them. And I'll a little segue to the LA Chargers. They took a quarterback, Justin Herbert, a grand slam. And this year they took the offensive lineman Slater, another grand slam. That's the kind of stuff the Dolphins need to do. That's the kind of stuff the Lions need to do.
Fair enough. Okay, well, we're going to go up I-95, at least in Florida. And the guy that we really hammered last week that Steve missed out on, Steve gets a crack at him this week, though. Urban Meyer, obviously, saw his team get hammered 37-19. And now the Jacksonville Jaguars have lost 20 straight times, second longest in NFL history. So I'm going to present all you guys with the same question, and then I'll mention a guy that was probably thankful that he doesn't have to take the heat, and that'll lead us to our next topic. Will Urban Meyer, Steve Balestrieri, last a second year in Jacksonville?
That remains to be seen. I know right now with all the news about John Gruden, probably the happiest guy in the world right now is Urban Meyer.
Right.
Because now the heat's off Urban.
That's
right
where
now.
I was going with this, but okay.
Yeah.
Great
So,
minds think alike.
You know, I think if no one's celebrating the news about John Gruden, but if there's somebody that's breathing a sigh of relief, it's Urban Meyer. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's tough. He inherited a really bad football team. And, you know, they have a rookie quarterback, and as talented as he is, and I really like him, you know, he's still a rookie quarterback. He's making a lot of mistakes, and not all of their issues resides with him. I mean, that's a team that's really bad right now. They have a long way to go. Although, and I'll caveat this saying, I think they get off the schneid this week.
Well, now I know we're headed against what we talking about a game this week, but everybody seems to be leading me in that direction. So, but we'll backtrack to what Steve said. Yeah, I think Urban Meyer is thankful that John Gruden is grabbing all the headlines, and we'll elaborate on that shortly. But yeah, I know there's a game between the Dolphins and the Jaguars. I've seen them play a few times actually, but I won't be able to see it this time because they'll be playing in London. So, but that. Rick Curti, let's talk about Urban Meyer.
Well, you know, it's not very well going really good for him right now, unfortunately. I mean, I guess you can say, well, Jimmy Johnson went 1-15 his first year with the Cowboys. So, you know, and I got 3 championships. So give me some time. We're pretty bad. And I got a rookie quarterback. So I think they'll buy him some time. I know he's very happy with what happened with Gruden, because they totally took that monkey off his back. And, you know, I'd see him maybe lasting a couple of years. I think he'll pull a Steve Spurrier and just, you know, resign. And I think he kind of regrets it. This is a whole different league. You got a bunch of, you know, $1 million adults you're coaching, not young adults who can't even buy a Happy Meal right now. So it's just different. I really thought he would go to Texas. I thought that would have been a great fit. I'm kind of surprised he didn't go back to college, but we'll see what happens. But if this thing of USC, you know, keep hearing these chants of USC and Urban Meyer, and hey, you know, he might just pull a Nick Saban and go there. So it's kind of mixed up right now. It's just so much bad going on right now with Jacksonville. So, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he just got tired of it and say, you know what, I tried it, wasn't my thing. Nick Saban tried it, he left. He's a great college coach. I can do the same thing. So we'll see what happens, but he might last at the end of the season, and really wouldn't be surprised if he went back to college the following season.
And another Florida Gator like Steve Spurrier. You want to talk about some prominent college coaches that didn't make it? We can really go back a ways. Bud Wilkinson made the jump. I believe he went, Steve, from Oklahoma up to the St.
Chuck
Louis.
Fairbanks.
And Chuck Fairbanks is another one. And of course, John McKay, since we're going to be on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers theme in a little while. So
Lou Holtz.
Yeah, Lou Holtz, another one, you know, and the list goes on and on. All right, Greg, what's your take on the Urban Meyer situation?
Well, we could go in a multitude of directions. If it's purely about wins and losses, even if they go 1-16 this season, I think he'll be back. If I was him, quitting or going to USC, throwing in the towel like that, man, that's a big pill to swallow if you're Urban Meyer, just to say that I failed. Now, does he get in more social media type trouble, as we just learned with Gruden? That certainly can bring you down real quick. And the other thing is, you hear these rumors for what they're worth. There's trouble in the locker room. They don't respect them, and I'm not sure how true that is. Maybe that's just the result of being 0-5. But if I was a betting man, which I'm not, little over 50-50. He's the coach in Jacksonville next year.
All right. Well, I think the thing that Urban Meyer has going against him is his track record up to this year. The initial hire that he had with that one, was it trainer or whatever that he had, and of course all the myriad of other issues that he's had that led to this most recent situation, in Ohio. So I think it's a combination of things. And then when you factor in the one loss record, so it didn't take just that one incident in Ohio to take him over the edge, but that certainly didn't help matters any. It's all the other things that led up to this point that has him in trouble. And of course, then they get whipped against Tennessee. So as if things weren't bad enough against the Bengals, the Tennessee Titans hammered them as well. So Mel, what's your take on Urban Meyer?
Well, I think he's probably thinking about to himself, why did I come back? Because he didn't need this. I mean, his legacy was cemented with what he did in college, and there's a lot of coaches. I mean, the pipeline to NFL coaches used to be kind of through the college ranks. There's a lot of coaches that have come through the college ranks. Dick Vermeil, he was at UCLA, and then he got hired on to take the Philadelphia job because he did a good job at UCLA, and that's how Terry Donahue got the job at UCLA, is when Dick Vermeil left. And we know Dick Vermeil, he's up for the Hall of Fame this year. But I think guys like John Gruden and Urban Meyer, with the money that they were making, John Gruden was making $7 million, I think it was, on Monday Night Football, and that's working way less than he's working right now. And not living with, having to answer questions. Now, eventually all this stuff would have come to light, and that probably would have, cost him his job at ESPN as well. But, Urban Meyer, I don't think, and you talk about Jimmy Johnson, there's a difference between Jimmy Johnson and Urban Meyer. Jimmy Johnson was a workaholic. Urban Meyer is not. Jimmy Johnson, Steve Spurrier was not. He liked to play golf. He wanted to go play golf. He's going to get out of there at a certain time, and he's going to make sure he made his tee time. But Jimmy Johnson was a workaholic, and he commanded respect from his players, and then he earned the respect from his players. Urban has a tough job right now. Now he's got to earn the respect from his players again. His resume in college means nothing right now. There's some guys that are great coaches, but they're great coaches and great teachers. And I think Nick Saban falls in that category. He wasn't a great coach of men, but he was a great teacher of young men. And he does a great job with young men. And Urban Meyer might fall in that same category, where he might be a great teacher and coach of young men, but he might not be a great teacher, coach, motivator of grown men. And right now he's kind of put himself behind the 8 ball because of his actions. Tony Dungy said he was involved in football for 28 years. Never has he, from being a player for 16 years, an assistant coach, and then a head coach, never has he heard of a head coach not going back with his team on the plane, because he said that's your responsibility as a coach to make sure, number one, everybody gets back on that plane safely. They get back to the facility safely. Then after that, then you can go do what you want to do. But he said he's never heard of that. Never. And I've never heard of that. I couldn't believe it. And the fact, to say you're going to be with your grandkids, that's fine. But you're out yucking it up at your restaurant, bar, whatever the case may be, and you got somebody, grinding you on your lap, and somebody has a camera and they film it, and you're liquored up. I mean, what can you say to your players? Really, what can you say to your players, and your players are going to respond? So I don't know if Urban Meyer survives this year. I think right now he's looking for a way out, to be honest with you.
Okay. Well, you know what? It's certainly going to be pretty interesting. All right, since you guys are egging me on for a prediction, for a game. All right, Greg, we're going to lead it off with you. The Dolphins and the Jaguars. Who do you have?
I mean, two teams that are playing terrible, and there is no reason to be optimistic about either one. But I got to go with the Dolphins. I mean, don't they have to put it together eventually? Have some schemes to confuse Lawrence, the rookie quarterback, And they seemed to get out of their own way against Tampa. They were able to, throw the ball down the field a little bit and get a little creative. So I'm going with the Dolphins this week, but I'm not betting my house on it.
All right, give me a score.
Ooh, 27-17.
All right, Steve.
I have a feeling Trevor Lawrence is going to, like London. You talk about a team that's 0-5, maybe going overseas is just the right thing for them. I just think they're going to get off the schneid this week. I like Jacksonville 24-21.
All right, Rick.
Well, I thought London was our friend. Why are we punishing them with these two horrible teams? So I'm sorry, London, but we've heard of the Rose Bowl and the Super Bowl. Welcome to the Toilet Bowl. This is going to be a horrible game. You got two of the possibly the worst teams in the NFL right now. Both teams are a mess right now. They really are. They're both dysfunctional, but I agree. I think Jacksonville's going to win. They have to win. I just don't see them like going 0-17 this year or whatever. They have to win. I think they'll eventually just, they'll win. It'll be an ugly game. I have 17-10 Jacksonville in a very ugly game. I'm sorry, London.
All right, Mel.
I'm gonna go with the veteran quarterback. Miami, they have a lot of injuries, obviously, with the quarterback being down. I think they have a few other players down, the receiver, I believe. I think that, the experience of the head coach, I think defensively they'll get after Trevor Lawrence a little bit. And I think that Miami will come out ahead. I think if they can get the running game going a little bit, take some of that pressure off of Jacoby Brissett. I don't see a whole lot great with Jacksonville. They don't run the ball very well. Obviously, Trevor Lawrence is very young. You can't really trust him right now. At least I can't really trust him right now. Defensively, they don't play that great. Unfortunately, there's not. And then they're dealing with this controversy now. Right now, somebody's got to be a leader. So who's the leader of this football club? I couldn't tell you. Is it going to be Trevor Lawrence and say, "Hey, we got to go out there and play for one another"? I doubt it. He's a rookie. I don't know. Maybe he is. I don't know who can stand up and say, "Hey, forget about all this stuff going on with coach. Let's just go out here and play for one another, and let's go out here and win this game." I don't know who their leader is in the locker room that can rally the troops and get the guys all on the same page and get them to go out there and put something together, put a game together where they can possibly win the game. So I'm gonna go with Miami in this one here. I'm gonna go, 24-17.
Well, you know what, Mel? Yeah, I was going to predict 24-17 Miami, and that's where I'll leave it. Yeah, for some reason or another, I think the Dolphins, the last thing Brian Flores needs to do is lose to the Jacksonville Jaguars, or people will start questioning his credibility a little bit more as well. So I'm going to go Miami 24-17. I didn't plan on bringing a prediction in, but I got the feeling from my contemporaries there that this one was necessary. So this is the only one of the day. All right, I'm going to go ahead and set the stage for obviously the topic of the day. I'm going to go over some potential hashtags of this show. I'm going to go ahead and read a bunch of them off, and we'll decide on them exactly later. And then we'll be able to talk about the subject, obviously, that's trending. First of all, Keyshawn Johnson, Tony Dungy, John Gruden, used car salesman, fraud, emails, 10 years, Urban Meyer, Tom Brady, Bruce Allen, Michael Sam, Canadian Football League Commissioner Roger Goodell, Mark Davis, Dan Campbell, Detroit Lions, Tampa Bay Bucks, Las Vegas Raiders, ESPN, blackballed, and of course, DeMaurice Smith. And of course, now we could potentially add three more with racist, homophobic, and misogynistic language. And obviously, the most recent development on this story is that the Buccaneers have decided to remove John Gruden from their Ring of Honor. Now, let me just say this about Michael Sam, okay? And this could be another show down the road. I personally don't think he should have ever been drafted by the NFL. I don't think he was that good anyways. He should have proven himself in the Canadian Football League. And I have nothing against that gay people whatsoever. I just don't think Michael Sam was good enough to play in the league. And that's my position on him. Now, with that said, obviously everybody knows that the John Gruden saga has been dominating the headlines for this whole thing. And some of the adjectives that I just mentioned, Keyshawn Johnson referred to John Gruden as a used car salesman and a fraud. I'll make my feelings known right now that I don't think Gruden should have ever been in the Ring of Honor because he inherited Tony Dungy's team. Tony Dungy should have 2 Super Bowl rings, not 1. And thankfully, he was able to get one out with the Indianapolis Colts. I've said my piece on it. I'm not going to go any further with that. So I'm going to start at the top with you, Greg, and then everybody's going to follow suit. And then that's where it'll end tonight. Greg, go ahead. What are your thoughts about the John Gruden situation?
I mean, you hear stuff like this all too often these days, and you just shake your head as to why people say certain things, or in this case, he wrote down certain things. I'm sure we all have thoughts that we never communicate about stuff, but if you communicate stuff like that, it's going to come back to bite you eventually. And Gruden, it took him, 7 to 10 years? And it wasn't even an investigation of Gruden. It was an investigation of the Washington football team that brought him down. And he got what he deserved. But I haven't seen the actual verbiage of all these emails, but the picture's been painted. Just stuff you can't do. And not only is he no longer the coach of the Raiders, he's probably worked his last position of any significance sports related.
Okay, Steve.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, in this era of email, I mean, did somebody not think that this would ever come to light? And, unfortunately, we hear this all too often. It has no place, it has no business in there. I'll just say this. I think Gruden's actions are totally wrong, despicable. And I mean, he had to know better than that. But I will say this, the NFL, they gathered 650,000 emails, and the only ones they're releasing are John Gruden's. What about all these with, the Washington team that we know is toxic? And, it just shows the owners run the league and they're circling the wagons, and they're not going to let anybody see, what the ownership and the higher ranking people in the Washington organization were emailing. I think that says a lot about what this investigation turned up, that they're using. And I'm not defending Gruden whatsoever. I think what he did and said was despicable. I saw some of the emails. It was in the New York Times. So, but, what about the other 650,000 emails from the Washington team? And so it just tells you ownership runs the league. They're not going to let us see. And if you think it was all Gruden and it stops there, I think you're deluded.
Yeah, Bruce Allen was a recipient of a lot of those emails, and there was a previous relationship when they worked together in Tampa, and I believe with the Raiders as well. And I'll get in fact, while that's fresh off my head, isn't it ironic, though, that the Raiders lost to the Chicago Bears that day, and the guy Khalil Mack, who he traded to the Bears, participated in that last game against John Gruden, and the Bears were on the winning end of that game. I won't go any further, but when you talk about ironies, that's indeed one of them. All right, Rick Curti, I know you're chomping at the bit to go ahead and drop the hammer of John Gruden, so take your shot.
Yeah, I wasn't really surprised with what's going on. It seems like every week or every day, there's always some high profile person where emails and tweets come out of the surface after years. And you're just like, wow. And what he said was just ridiculous and stupid and ignorant, especially about DeMaurice Smith. I mean, you don't like the guy, you just say, I hate DeMaurice Smith. He shouldn't be in the NFL. You don't go and bash and make fun of him and say homophobic slurs about other people and stuff like that. You don't have to like Roger Goodell, but the way he went at it was just so much hate in there. And, I always thought Gruden was so overrated. We all know that it was Tony Dungy's team that won the Super Bowl. And, when he got that 10-year, $100 million contract to go back to the Raiders, I really shook my head. I just thought it's not going to go well. And he's going to leave within
I mean, as far as the emails are concerned, I think the thing that amazes me about the whole thing is they go back 10 years, and yet all of things are starting to come to the forefront. One of the analogies I've heard today, where you talk about an email, then all of a sudden an avalanche of emails, so it isn't just one particular thing. It's amazing how this whole thing unfolded and transpired. So an email, okay, Friday, why did you not get rid of them Friday? And then you're gathering everything to Sunday and then release it on Monday Night Football, a show that he obviously was a big part of. So, again, don't press send, but I've never been a big fan of John Gruden either. I thought he was, when you look at his track record, how many times has he been to the playoffs? I believe his record as a coach overall is 117 and 112 with a Super Bowl championship. Well, like we said, for a team that he inherited that was ready to go with Tony Dungy. Keyshawn Johnson said, yeah, he provided the extra energy to maybe get us there. But what did he do after the fact? Well, we all know what he did. Made it to the playoffs a couple of times. When he won that Super Bowl, he rubbed it into the Raiders and ran up the score. And of course, the Raiders would get a boatload of draft choices to unload him to Tampa. Who knows where he'll go back to live? Is he going to stay in Vegas or move back to Tampa? But yeah, I agree with you, Rick, about the podcast. That's probably where he'll end up. So with that said, I'm going to transition over to Mel Farr Jr. I've had Mel on so many of these interesting shows here, whether it was a Black Lives Matter, themes or whatever. Now we've got a show here with John Gruden where I have to admit the words racist, homophobic, and misogynistic, and talking about women not being referees and all the other things that have transpired. What's your take on this whole fiasco, Mel?
It's mind-boggling that we're still having these conversations in 2021, that these kind of things are continuing to come up. The thing that really caught me is the fact that things didn't, the seat didn't get warm for John Gruden until the homophobic statements and the misogynistic statements came out. When it was just the racist comments, I think they felt that he could survive it. Then the NFL sent out some more emails and said, hey, I think the NFL wanted Mark Davis to do something. He didn't do anything with just the racist comments that he made regarding D. Smith. And, maybe the little thing he said about Goodell. And then they shared with him some things he said that were disparaging to women and the LGBTQ community. And that's when, all hell broke loose, for lack of a better word. And, I guess the thing that bothers me is that, all minorities should be treated equally. And, I think if the other stuff hadn't come out, I don't think we'd be having this conversation. I think John Gruden would still have his job. The other thing I want to know, and I think Steve touched on this, there's 650,000 emails, and these are only emails that you found to be offensive out of all those emails. Now, Bruce Allen, he had to say something back, I would imagine, whether it was LOL or yeah, I understand, or yeah, I feel the same way too, whatever. I'm sure he got a response back. I'm sure John just didn't send out fire out emails to Bruce Allen talking about, the statement that he made about, who was it, Jeff Fisher, that he said Goodell made Jeff Fisher draft Michael Sams, and the
Right, I know which one you're referring to.
it. I'm sure there had to be some type of response. And for John Gruden to feel, obviously him and Bruce Allen go back. So they're comfortable with one another. They're going to communicate. So what I'm interested to see, and I know that NFLPA has petitioned the NFL to release the rest of the emails because they want to know what else was said as well. And I would be interested to see what they had to say as well. Because to me, it's really no secret how people act. People act one way in front of the camera in the public, but once they're amongst their own peers, I think they act a little differently. It's kind of like people with alcohol. That's why I don't hang around folks with alcohol, because that way I don't give them a chance to say anything that they might not otherwise say. Because I think everybody gets a little loose when they have alcohol. They think they can say things that they know they couldn't say, or they know they wouldn't say if they were sober. The one thing I'll say about Michael Sam, and you had made it, Scott, you had said something about it. He was a co-defensive player of the year in the SEC, I think, with Jadeveon Clowney.
Right.
I don't know. I never saw him play, so I can't say whether or not he should have ever had the opportunity to play in the NFL. But if you're the co-defensive player of the year coming from Missouri in the SEC, it seems like you might have you probably have a place somewhere in the NFL. And I really think with him coming out, I think that had a lot to do with him not making a football team. I really do. Now, if he had never come out with that, I think, he would have made a football club. But because he did come out with it, and, whatever the culture is in the NFL, the macho culture, whatever it is, whatever you want to call it, I think that kept him out of the league, to be honest with you. But I wouldn't say the guy was terrible because I never saw him play. But if he was co-MVP, he had to be pretty decent football player.
Well, he may have been ahead of his time in that sense, where maybe they weren't ready for it. Carl Nassib, I believe, is a gay player that's doing pretty well with the Raiders, so I can't say anything there. All I know is this: it's not uncommon, okay, that if you don't make the NFL, that you go to Canada and you get an opportunity to play there, that you're able to impress enough people with good game film that you return to the NFL anyhow. I'm not knocking anything against a gay player. If you're good enough to play, I don't care what you're able to do, then to me, it's all about winning. So again, I know this is a topic of conversation where I want to make sure that I stay clear, that nobody will say that I have anything against them, because I don't at all. The NFL is, if you can play football and you're able to go out there and play it at a high level, everybody deserves an opportunity to be an employee, equal opportunity employer. That's how I've always believed in my mind. I mean, the only time you don't have an equal opportunity employer is when you have a mule kicking field goals, and we'll lighten this thing up a little bit and not have to worry about it, okay? Because we couldn't find any kickers over the weekend that could kick them, but we won't get into that conversation, but they couldn't. So by no means am I trying to indict Michael Sam at that time. Bear in mind, that was a compensatory pick as well. So there were extra draft choices, and he obviously was taken. So I don't know, but he did have an opportunity to play in Canada. I do know that much. And you know what? It's not uncommon that people play in Canada and they work their way into the NFL. Want some case in points? Warren Moon was pretty good. Doug Flutie was pretty good. And there are a lot of players that have gone from Canada to the United States that have played well. So
Doug started out in the NFL, then went to Canada, and then came back to the NFL.
Right, he did. But by the same token, I think what was he, Mike Ditka's project, but you still have a lot of Canadian Football League players that made it to the National Football League that had an opportunity to get reps. So I want to make sure that it's very clear on this show. I have nothing against Michael Sam. I really don't. Again, co-defensive player, I believe he played for the University of Missouri, if I remember.
You did.
So, more power to him. He didn't make it. Then again, it's not a shame if nobody makes it the NFL to begin with, because it's not an easy gig to land. So,
No.
But they're always looking for players. And nowadays at the practice squads, we're a little bit 15 players versus 10, maybe he had a chance to stick around. We'll never know. But to make comments along those lines are completely uncalled for. So I just want to make sure that I go on record that I have nothing against Michael Sam whatsoever, or anybody that's gay at all. I'm just making that very, very clear on this show. But, with all due respect, the Canadian Football League has produced a lot of good players. And you know what? Who knows? We'll never know anyways. But, Carl Nassib, on the other hand, is doing a pretty good job with the Raiders. And don't be surprised to see other players that are of that are along those lines do make it. Is this a wake up call for a lot of people? Probably. Anybody else want to add to that?
The guys coming from Canada, don't forget Cam Lake.
All right. I think Joe Theismann been playing Canada too, didn't he?
Yeah, the
Certainly
Argonauts
did.
Yeah, so
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of
and the Rocket too.
but
Raheem
he got
Ishmael,
paid,
he went to
he got
the
paid a whole lot of money though. He got paid
Yeah.
a lot of money to go to Canada.
he was
and
like
that
one of the first to go to the CFL, and it was like, huh?
And
But yeah,
that didn't really work out that well.
no, and then he went back to the NFL. Yeah,
But Canada is not necessarily. I mean, the game is a little bit different up in Canada, and not everybody wants to go to Canada, and I understand that.
High
Sometimes
taxes.
you're just NFL or bust, or some sort of American type of football where you can have a real opportunity to get back in the NFL, because Canada, it's a little bit different. I mean, there's been some great Canadian players that have never played in the NFL, like Marcus Allen's brother, Damon Allen. I mean, he was he's a legend up there in Canadian football, because obviously he was an African American quarterback back at that particular time. The NFL wasn't really ready for African American quarterbacks, but he tore up the CFL and set all kind of records. I think he's in the Hall of Fame up there.
well, we have a wider field.
Joe Cap was another CFL dude.
Yeah, so there's no indictment against the NFL, the CFL. I mean, they produce a lot of good players. They have a good tradition up north of the border, without a doubt, and all that. But I'm always a firm believer that if you can get more reps anywhere that you can get them, why not try to do it if you really want to play football bad enough? That's all.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. If you really want to play football bad enough. So I mean, we don't know what his heart's like and his desire and how bad he really wanted to play. Some guys, they bounce around for a long time, and then some guys, other things happen. You get married, you have some kids, or things happen, and you just can't keep doing it. Can't keep chasing that dream. You have to, get yourself a real job and start working.
All right, so why don't we button up the Gruden conversation? Greg, what are your final thoughts about John Gruden?
Good riddance. I mean, he got what he deserved, and I have to agree with most of you. He always sort of rubbed me the wrong way. He always made it seem like he was the guru of coaches. He knew stuff that other people didn't. And, he's probably a good coach, not a great coach. So don't let the door hit you on the way out.
Okay, Steve?
I always thought he was a good offensive coach. I didn't think he was a great head coach. I always liked him on Monday Night Football. I mean, I'm not going to argue. I lie about that. I thought he provided some good insight, but that's all done. I think we mentioned that a couple of times. He's not going to get hired by anybody now. He's done. I mean, the only way he's ever going to be broadcast again is if he makes his own channel.
You read Curti?
Yeah, I was never a big fan of Gruden. My brother's a big Raiders fan, and he always liked Gruden. I'm sure he's having a cow right now with what's going on. They always called him Chucky, and unfortunately, the things that he said were very Chucky-ish. The hate and the ignorance that came out of his emails. It's just astounding. So I'm not really going to miss him. He always come off to me as really obnoxious and Mr. Know-it-all, especially with his Gruden camp, with his spider. Was that Spider 2 banana route he always mentioned, and he always come off as kind of really like I'm so much smarter than you, and came up as obnoxious. So I'm not going to miss him. So bye, and probably in a couple of years he'll resurface and have his own podcast. That's the only way I see him being relevant. But don't matter where he goes, nobody wants anything to do with him.
Okay, Mel?
I wouldn't be surprised if he resurfaces in 5 years or something like that. I mean, there's people, like-minded folks like him that would probably love to listen to him. I think he was a better character than he was a coach. I think he had, and when I say that, I think people got caught up in the Chucky thing and the scowl and all those things that he did when he was on the sidelines. I think he was much better character than he was a coach. I think he's only as a coach a couple games over 500. And I think his best years were probably in Oakland before he went to Tampa Bay and took over Tony Dungy's team. But I think he'll probably resurface. I mean, everybody deserves a second chance. It's a teaching moment. It's a learning moment. I'm sure he is learning from it. I'm sure he will learn from it. And in time, this won't be, this won't take up, it won't be the talk. Will there be something else we'll be talking about next week? Just like last week it was Urban Meyer. This week it's John Gruden, and who knows if some more of those emails come out? Who knows who we're going to be talking about next week? Who's going to be the subject next week? So, but I mean, it's going to take some time because there's going to be a lot of backlash. He won't get another NFL coaching job. I doubt that very seriously. I don't know if he'll get a college coaching job. I don't know if that's even something that he'd want to do. I don't know. Hopefully he saved up his money. He's made a lot of money. I don't think that Oakland is entitled to pay him. I'm sure there's some type of personal
morals clause,
morals clause or something like that that's going to get out of paying him that albatross of a contract that he was making. So, don't cry for John Gruden. He's going to be fine. He said something stupid. He's going to pay the price for it. And, I'm sure he will resurface again at some point in time.
Yeah, all I'll say about John Gruden, overrated, overhyped. Welcome to the podcast industry. And if there's a college team down the road, maybe 3 to 5 years down the road, that's looking to make a splash hire, maybe he'll wind up there. You never know if he wants to coach bad enough, not because he needs the money. It's not uncommon for guys that have made a lot of money over the years to be able to take a college job and, they've had time to think it through, to be able to go out there and get another opportunity, but I don't see him on a sideline anytime soon. So overrated, overhyped. But that said, okay, as we wrap up the show, we're going to let Rick Curti go ahead and give the COVID message. Then Rick will lead off with our closing thoughts on how everybody get hold of him. All right, Rick, go ahead. Start with COVID and then the rest.
Okay, well, COVID's still around, the Delta variant. And all I just tell people is just to get vaccinated. I know it's not fun. I know it's not cool, but it'll keep you safe. And you can actually go out and do things like go to a baseball game or a football game or whatever. That's the stuff that I've been missing, with COVID going around. And just wear your mask, just use some good old common sense. Just get vaccinated, wear your mask, social distance. Not only you're going to be safe, but you're going to make other people around you safe. And just be safe around everybody and don't take any chances. Try to avoid any large gatherings, especially in tight enclosed places. Make sure you're 6 feet apart, and eventually we'll hopefully get back to our normal lives, but just get vaccinated, wear your mask, and just use some good old common sense.
Okay, go ahead and let everybody know they get a hold of you.
My website is www.charlottebats.com. My email address is cltbatsbaseball@gmail.com. You can also connect with me on Facebook at Charlotte MLB and Charlotte Bats Baseball. I'm also on Instagram at Charlotte Bats, Twitter on Charlotte Bats Baseball, and I'm also on LinkedIn under Rick Curti, Curti, and you can contact me on any of those social media networks.
Okay, Greg Fuchs.
Yeah, just a quick COVID comment. I went to my doctor today and she said, get those booster shots.
Okay.
You can get me. I do all my writing at southfloridatribune.com, and on Twitter, my handle is gfuchs @GregoryFuchs.
Very good. Steve.
Hey, good to see everyone again this week. You can find me on social media, on Twitter at SteveB7SFG. I write for PatsFans.com. My email address is steve@sofrep.com. That's the military site that I'm a senior editor for. I also do a lot of writing for them as well. So I'm always out there, and folks, take care of each other and take care of yourselves.
Mel.
Catch me on all the social media at Mel Farr Jr. Our website is melfarr.org for the things that we have going on here in Atlanta and Detroit for the young people.
And finally, us. Obviously, my name is Scott Morgan, Motor City Madmouth. You can email me at southfloridatribune@gmail.com. On Twitter, you can find us at Tribune South. That's at Tribune South. Our website is www.southfloridatribune.com. You can find all of our shows over there. You can also find them on our YouTube channel. Feel free to go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You get all the videos as well as the sound. And more importantly, I should also mention that you can find these shows wherever you get your podcasts, whether that's iHeartRadio, Spreaker, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and you name it, as I mentioned, we got Google, Apple, iHeart, and there's a million of them out there. So you can find a sports exchange out there. And I think, for a lot of you folks that are listening in the automobile, I know we touch on a lot of very key points, but it is important to realize that when we talk about these kind of things, another one I should mention as well as Spotify. So I'll go over them again real quickly. We have Spotify, Apple, Google, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, just to name a few, wherever you get your podcasts as well. I call it the marketplace of places to find your podcast, because there's a lot of them out there, and John Gruden's going to find out there's millions of them out there. We'll just see what kind of a platform he has, but we hope you've enjoyed this edition of the Sports Exchange tonight. Very proud to be joined by Greg Fuchs, Steve Balestrieri, Rick Curti, Mel Farr Jr., and of course my name is Scott Morganroth, your host. So on behalf of all of us, we want to thank you very much for joining us on this edition, and we'll look to do better the next time. Take care, everybody, and have a great week. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you.
Good night.